I would most likely have been on the boardwalk myself, engaging in my new favorite activity, rollerblading. Yeah, I know. The once mighty Thomas Prescott, detective extraordinaire, fearless defender of justice, and according to one post by the 14-member Facebook group Prescott Posse, unconventional sex symbol, had been reduced to a rollerblading nanny. And sure, if old Thomas could see what new Thomas had become, he would most likely stake out new Thomas's house, wait for him to put on his knee pads, wrist guards, and helmet, strap on his blades, and put in his earbuds. Then, when new Thomas was least expecting it, riding that blader's high, hands beating to Michael Jackson's greatest hits, old Thomas would gun the engine and Mad Max new Thomas into oblivion. Or old Thomas would just be really sad. One of the two. There was a diaper pail in the far corner of the balcony, and I walked over and deposited the diaper. I nearly replaced the lid when I noticed something small and gray among the rolled-up balls of white. Shaking my head, I reached down and extracted my sister's pug, Baxter. As was often the case with narcoleptics, Baxter was fast asleep. I shook him, his beady eyes finally opening, and I said, "Of all the places to take a nap." He panted in reply. I set him down, and he scurried in through the door, where he promptly began chasing Clark around the living room. I watched the two play for a few minutes, until Baxter's body went limp, and he somersaulted a few times before coming to rest against a bookshelf. I took a little off for the landing, but it was still a solid 9.2. I checked the time on my watch. It was nearly noon, and said, "I think it's time for someone else's nap." Clark fought me for his requisite 20 minutes, but by 12:15 p.m. he was down and out. I grabbed the baby monitor and made my way to the carpet in the living room and began doing my daily rehab. 2 years earlier, I was involved in a crash, not a car, a hot air balloon. I counted myself lucky that a sprained knee was my only injury. The other two occupants fared far worse. Wheeler, the small-town veterinarian I was dating at the time, broke her arm in 2 places, and the third occupant, well, let's just say that he's doing his best Stephen Hawking impression. I moved to France a month after the crash. At the time, I'd recently gotten back into shape after gaining nearly 40 pounds and was running 5 miles a day, but my knee continued to bug me. Finally, at the constant urging of Lacey, I went to get an MRI. The verdict? A torn meniscus. I wasn't a stranger to hospitals, having been shot twice, fallen off a cliff into the Atlantic Ocean, been technically dead for 7 minutes, collapsed a lung, and most recently been attacked by a pack of wolves. So I put off surgery for over a year, but it finally got to the point where I could hardly chase after Clark without my knee doubling in size. I was initially scheduled to go under the knife in early March, but a few weeks before surgery, Lacey had one of her worst MS flare-ups in years. Lacey was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis her junior year in college, and she'd had several bad flare-ups in the following years, the most severe resulting in 2 months of temporary blindness. In late February, the incurable autoimmune disease once again reared its ugly head, this time attacking Lacey's balance and coordination. She was weak, could barely hold a fork, and couldn't go 3 feet without the assistance of a walker. With Caleb pulling double duty at the art gallery, I knew I would need to help my sister look after Clark. And I did, moving back in with them and sharing a room with the then 1-year-old. It was during this time that I noticed my first ever gray hairs. There they were, sprinkled among the cinnamon brown ones. Was there a direct correlation between this onset of graying and my sharing a bedroom with a crying baby? Yes, there was. Thankfully, before I went full Ted Danson, Lacey's symptoms waned and her strength and coordination came back, and a couple of weeks later I had my knee repaired. My main rehab for the past few months had been swimming in the warm waters of the Baie des Anges, Angel's Bay, which is what the fishermen had named the Mediterranean waters off the coast of Nice. And of course rollerblading, which I took up after Lacey sent me an article about how much better it was for your knees than running. But I also had to do a number of grueling exercises and stretches with a resistance band. I pressed my foot against the purple band and counted out 10 leg extensions. After working my knee for another 15 minutes, I spent the remainder of the hour stretching. At 37, I had the aches and pains of a baby boomer, and the orthopedist who fixed my knee said that if I wanted to be able to get out of bed in my 40s, I should start doing yoga. I was holding one hell of a warrior, too, when I heard Clark stir on the baby monitor. I fed him some mac and cheese, apple slices, and some green beans. Then I crawled around with him on my back. I was his donkey, which